The girl arrived at dusk, barefoot and quiet as smoke. Sheriff Creel found her sitting in the back of an ox-drawn freight wagon, among bolts of cloth and a sack of onions, her dress the same dun color as the road. She looked about 15 but might have been older, her body stooped by something more than weight. She said her name was Mina. Nothing else came easily. No one knew where she'd come from, and she gave no direction, only looked west when asked, as if her tongue couldn't risk the truth. Her eyes were washed of color, the same pale green as lichen, and her mouth sat small and tight as if stitched closed for years. The wagoner had picked her up a few miles past Larkspur Ridge, where she'd been walking alongside a dead horse, reins still clenched in her hand. She didn't say a word, he'd told Creel. Wouldn't take water at first, just kept walking till her feet bled. They gave her a cot in the back of the mercantile, and the widow who ran it, Mrs. Embry, kept a gentle watch over her. Mina didn't speak the first 3 days. She woke before dawn, swept the porch without being asked, folded cloth bolts back into place, and disappeared before anyone could thank her. It was as if she had no center, no desire but to be missed by the world. People in Lanton took their measure of her, most with wary eyes. The baker's wife whispered that something wasn't right about her, that kind of silence was unnatural. Others nodded. Folks around here knew how to survive drought, fever, Indian raids, and bad men. But a girl who had learned to survive silence that unsettled even the old-timers. Only the horses seemed untroubled by her. The wild-eyed mare in the corral behind the livery, Mina's spit to most, let Mina stroke her cheek with soft, knuckled fingers. She didn't flinch when the mare nipped, only whispered something low and breathless, a sound like river rush, and the animal stilled. Weeks passed, fall set in. Smoke from cook fires curled into the pale sky, and Mina remained, a quiet, unclaimed thing, half there in every room she entered. It wasn't until the preacher's wife tried to send her to the asylum in Cheyenne that anyone stood up for her. The town had gathered in the meeting hall, creaking floorboards and stiff-backed chairs. The preacher's wife made her case gently but firmly. Mina needed help, she said, professionals, trained women. She couldn't stay forever in someone else's storeroom like a stray kitten. Mina stood in the back, eyes lowered. She held a worn satchel in both hands, though it was empty. Her knuckles were white. The man who spoke up hadn't spoken much at all before that day. He came down from the hills once a month, leading a mule and wearing an old army coat, the insignia cut away. Folks called him Harper. No one knew if it was his first name or last, and no one asked. He had a limp that never slowed him, and eyes that had seen fire. But his voice, when he used it, was gentler than anyone expected. "She stays," he said, from where he leaned in the doorway. "I got room at my place. Won't be no bother." Silence struck the hall clean. Harper didn't look at Mina when he spoke, just kept his gaze on the preacher's wife. Something passed between them, mutual understanding or mutual weariness. She pressed her lips, then nodded. That was all it took. Mina followed Harper out without question. Her satchel still hung empty. But when he offered her his mule's reins to hold, she took them, fingers trembling. The ride up the hill trail was wordless. Pine creaked in the wind, and somewhere a fox cried once, then fell silent. Harper didn't speak until the cabin came into view, a lean, slow-proofed thing nestled near a bluff, chimney dark with soot, garden gone brittle with frost. "You can have the loft," he said. "Warm up there." Mina nodded. She didn't ask why. He didn't ask what had happened to her. They sat on the porch that night, him with a pipe, her with her hands folded between her knees. The moon came out, pale and veined like old milk glass. When she coughed, he passed her a tin cup of water. When she spilled it, he said nothing. A week passed. She didn't run. He taught her to feed the chickens, chop wood without blistering her palms, fish without spooking the stream. She worked like she didn't know how to rest. And always, always, that silence, heavy but never hostile, Harper didn't mind. He spoke little himself, as if noise used to cost him something. He never touched her, not once. But when the roof leaked, she climbed up first. When the mare foaled early, he let her sit all night in the hay, holding the wet, trembling thing. There were scars on her back, thin, cruel lashes like map lines, but he never asked. She burned the dress she came in, and he never mentioned it. They spoke for the first time on the 14th day. It was morning, cold. She handed him a slice of cornbread, and when he took it, she looked him in the eye. I won't steal, she said. Not even food. His eyes held hers. I know. And that was enough, but something stirred in the woods beyond them, trouble not yet named, and the past hers his never stayed buried forever. Winter came with little warning. Snow slid in from the north, soft at first, then brutal. Trees snapped under the weight of it, and the river near Harper's Bluff went hard with ice. They kept close to the cabin, rising early, sleeping early. Time slipped between the hours, and the world outside turned to bone. Inside, a quiet life took shape. Mina learned to sew patches into wool, gut a trout clean, knead dough until it rose like breath. She still did not speak often, but when she did, it was to ask after useful things. How long salt pork kept, how to keep mice from the grain bin, which roots were poison and which healed the gut. She listened like someone who had once trusted too quickly and paid in flesh. Harper let her learn at her own speed. He built the cabin after the war, after his own past had hollowed him out. In the quiet, he recognized something of himself in her, the stillness that was not peace, but endurance. One night the wind shrieked so fierce it rattled the stovepipe. Mina flinched. She sat up in her cot, arms locked around her knees, body tensed like a trapped animal. Harper, already stoking the fire, didn't look up. Storm's bad, he said. Nothing else. Her eyes darted toward the window. Then, after a long pause, sounds like my stepfather's voice. That was the first thing she told him, not a whole truth, but a shard of it, sharp and cold. Harper stirred the coals and said nothing. That was his way. He knew how to leave space where another man might crowd. Days passed. The snow deepened. They ran out of lamp oil and used beeswax candles instead. Sometimes she sang under her breath when she thought he wasn't listening, soft, tuneless murmurs like a lullaby remembered only halfway. One morning Mina brought in an owl, small thing, wing broken, eyes fierce. She'd found it near the woodpile, half buried in drift. He's dying, she said. Harper examined the bird with careful hands. Maybe not, you wanna try. She nodded. They kept the owl in a straw-lined box by the hearth. Mina fed it raw bits of mouse and bound the wing with strips from an old undershirt. Every day she checked it, lips pressed tight in concentration. When it pecked her once, drawing blood, she didn't flinch. You get attached, Harper asked one evening, after the bird had let her stroke its feathers without striking. She shook her head. I just don't like watching things give up. He didn't say it, but he thought the same about her. Then came the men from Dry Ridge, 3 of them, riders with sharp spurs and louder voices. They came up the trail like they had a right to everything they saw, eyes flicking to the cabin, to Mina, to Harper's old Enfield rifle leaning by the porch door. The leader's name was Merle Sykes. Broad shoulders, brown hat creased low. He spat chew into the snow and grinned too much. We're looking for a girl, he said. Young, pale, walked off with a satchel she didn't earn. Mina stood behind Harper, still as frost. Her fingers gripped the porch rail. I don't know any girl like that, Harper said evenly. Yeah, she's got a scar on her temple and burns on her wrists, pretty in a scared way. Harper didn't look back, didn't check, he knew. You can ride on, he said. Sykes tilted his head. You got her, don't you? Harper didn't answer. There was a long silence, then Sykes spat again. We'll be back. They left a scar of hoofprints in the snow, cutting through the clearing like a wound. That night Mina sat by the fire and held the owl in her lap. Its wing twitched now, healing. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But Harper saw the way her shoulders curled in, folding herself around something she still carried. He poured 2 cups of coffee, set one beside her. You're not something to be claimed, he said. Not by them, not by me, but if you want to stay, you're not alone here. She didn't lift her eyes, but she drank the coffee. That was the second thing she gave him. Outside, the wind rose again. The owl blinked, slow and steady. Snow fell like ash. Trouble had named itself now. It would return. But something in Mina had begun to root, fragile and green beneath the frost. Spring came with reluctance. The snow rotted slowly into mud, and the trees uncurled their fists of green. Sap ran, thin and sweet. Chickens laid again. The river sang beneath its thaw. Mina planted carrots. Not because she liked them, she didn't, but because they kept well, and Harper said the soil would take them. She worked with her sleeves rolled and her boots unlaced, hair pulled back with a strip of calico. She was stronger now. The color had come back to her face, though her voice still came only when it had to. One evening, while she mended a tear in Harper's coat, she asked, "Why do you live alone?" Harper didn't answer at once. He was whittling a new spoon by the stove, the blade of his knife flashing slow in the lamplight. "Too many years in a place where I couldn't trust anybody," he said finally. "Figured I'd rather hear trees than men." She looked at him not quite directly. "Did someone hurt you?" He shook his head. "Not in the way you mean, but I saw too much done to others. Made me ashamed of what I'd stood near and called duty." She nodded slowly. "Me too, not war, but something like it." It was the longest exchange they'd ever had. That night she dreamt of firelight on hands, not Harper. Rougher hands, hands that took without asking. She woke sweating, her mouth open in a scream she didn't let out. Harper was already stoking the fire. He didn't look at her. He just poured her water, set it beside her cot, and walked out into the half-light. Later that morning, she found him by the stream, casting a line into water clear as glass. She stood beside him for a while without speaking. Then she said he kept a ledger with girls' names. Mine was there. Harper didn't ask who. He didn't need to. "They sold us," she said. "Some to mines, some to men, some just disappeared." His knuckles whitened on the rod, but his voice was calm. "You got out." "Barely." "That's more than some." They caught 3 fish that day. Mina cleaned them herself. 2 days later, a rider came up from town. Mrs. Embry had sent word Sykes was back. He'd taken to asking around Lanton, showing a crude drawing, offering coin. "He means to come here again," the rider warned. "Might not be alone." Harper thanked him, said little else. That night he brought down the old Spencer rifle from the rafters and oiled it carefully. Mina didn't speak, but the air around her changed, tighter, expectant. The next morning she took the owl from its box. Its wing had healed. It looked at her unblinking. "Time to go," she whispered. She walked it out to the bluff and opened her hands. It sat a moment, then launched into the pale blue sky, wings steady. Harper watched from the porch. "Thought you'd keep it." "I wanted to." "Then why let it go?" She looked at him, "Because it needed sky more than it needed me." He nodded, slow and quiet. Then he reached into his coat and handed her a small, leather-wrapped bundle. "What's this?" she asked. "Knife, handle's bone, light, but it'll hold." She unwrapped it, held it in her palm. The blade gleamed. "You think I'll need it?" "I think I won't always be standing beside you." She closed her fingers around the hilt. "I won't run." "I know." They made plans without saying so, where to hide, where to stand if gunfire came. Mina slept with the knife under her cot. Harper slept near the door. They didn't speak of fear, only of readiness. On the 5th day, Sykes returned. But he wasn't alone. They came up the trail like a promise unkept, Sykes at the front, 2 new men behind, their faces hard with the same brand of hunger. The horses sweated dark beneath their flanks, though the morning was cool. Each man wore iron on his hip and something worse in his eyes. Harper stood in the doorway, coat unbuttoned, rifle resting light against his palm. Mina stood behind the window's curtain, watching through the frayed lace. "You didn't listen," Harper said. Sykes smiled wide, teeth too white. "I listened just fine. You said ride on." "I said I'd be back." "You brought trouble." "I brought what's mine." Harper didn't flinch. "She's no one's." "You sure about that?" Sykes glanced at the others. Boys saw the ledger. "There's marks beside her name. That means paid for." "Means belonging." A low wind passed between them, stirring the pine needles. From the loft, the mare snorted once. Mina held her breath. Harper raised the rifle, not aimed yet, just a gesture. "She's got her own will." "That's more than you've ever owned." Sykes tilted his head. "You want to die over some used-up girl." Harper didn't answer. The second man, a narrow-eyed one with fingers that twitched near his belt, stepped forward. "We don't want to spill blood. Just want what's owed." At that, Mina stepped out. Her voice was clear. "You don't own me." Sykes turned, blinking. "Well, now the mouse squeaks." "I wasn't yours. You took me. There's no mark in that ledger worth a name." Harper didn't move. The rifle stayed steady. Sykes looked at her. Something in his gaze sharpened. You always had a mouth. I liked it better shut. Mina took one step forward, the knife hidden in her palm. You liked a lot of things better broken. That was when the shooting started. Not loud, not wild. A crack from Harper's rifle, sharp as snapped bone. The twitchy one went down, shoulder bloodied. Sykes drew, too slow. The second shot took his hat, not his head. They scattered. Hooves churned mud. One rider fell trying to mount. Mina didn't run. She stood there, knife ready, breath even. When the dust settled, only Sykes remained, gun gone, eyes wild. Harper stepped closer. Go back. Tell whoever you answer to she's not coming. Sykes spat blood. You think this ends it? No, Mina said. I do. She walked forward and pressed the blade to his throat. Not hard enough to break skin, but close. I'm not quiet anymore. Sykes saw it then, not just the blade, but the truth behind it. He turned and stumbled to his horse, climbing like a man aged by fear. They rode off into the trees. This time, they didn't say they'd return. That night, Harper built a fire higher than usual. Mina sat beside him, silent. He passed her a cup of strong tea. Her hands didn't shake. You did what you had to, he said. She nodded. I didn't want to kill him. You didn't. I would have. He looked at her then, not like a protector, but as something nearer, equal, tested, known. That don't make you like him. No, she said. It makes me free. The moon rose, clean and full. The owl circled once above the bluff, wings spread against the stars. They watched it together, neither speaking. Summer pressed into the hills with a breath like a slow furnace. The days lengthened, heavy with cicadas and the scent of sap. Grass went gold along the trail, and wild strawberries crept thick near the fence posts. Harper strung new wire along the east line, and Mina helped, gloves too large for her hands. They spoke more now, but never much at once. Words came like rain in dry country, measured, rare, needed. Each morning she walked the bluff's edge, toes to the rock, hair loose. The fear that had once curled in her chest like smoke was thinning. She still startled at slammed doors, still dreamt of corridors lit by kerosene and footsteps behind her. But the air had space in it now, and her breath fit inside her ribs again. Harper made her a small desk from a broken wagon plank and 2 sawhorses, set it near the window. She took to writing in a ledger of her own, names she remembered, girls who hadn't run fast enough, girls who hadn't been lucky. Some she wrote down once, others she whispered aloud, then inked carefully. She taught herself to read better from the Bible Harper never opened and a stack of penny novels left behind by a trader. She underlined phrases that felt true. The heart is deceitful, the meek shall inherit, not lost but wandered. Sometimes Harper read over her shoulder. Once he said, You write like someone who ain't done yet. She smiled, I'm not. That summer, they went into town together. It was the first time Mina had walked openly through Lanton without her eyes on the ground. Her hair was braided. She wore a dress she'd sewn herself, plain calico, but mendied neat. The townsfolk watched, quiet at first, then nodded to Harper, nodded to her. At the mercantile, Mrs. Embry offered her a bolt of blue cotton and a faint smile. You look taller, she said. I am, Mina replied. Standing up now. They left with a sack of coffee, a tin of kerosene, a pair of boots. At the edge of town, a small boy ran up, dust on his nose. You the owl girl? He asked. Mina looked at Harper, then nodded. I guess so. The boy grinned. Mama says you whispered a spell on that bird, made it live. She crouched to his height. No spell, just time and gentleness. He looked puzzled, then nodded solemnly. I like owls. So do I. When they reached the cabin again, Harper lit the stove and made cornbread. Mina fed the fire, humming. That night lightning came, not fire starting, not fierce, just light dancing on the hills. They watched from the porch, shoulder to shoulder, unmoving. I used to count thunder to stay calm, Mina said. Made it into a game, the space between flash and sound. Harper nodded, did the same in the war, called it God's breath. She looked at him. Did you believe in God then? He hesitated. I believed in what men did when they thought he wasn't watching. They fell quiet. The next day she carved a line into the doorframe, just above Harper's oldest notch, just beneath the nail he'd used to hang his hat. She didn't say what it meant. He didn't ask. The season turned again. Apples formed green in the trees, and the mule limped less with each morning walk. Mina built a shelf for her ledger, and Harper found her one evening sanding the wood smooth with river stone. "You think you'll stay?" he asked. She looked out at the bluff, the garden, the place where the owl had flown. "I think I already did." Autumn came softer this time. The air held less warning, more memory. Trees bronzed in silence, not fury. The ground gave underfoot like it had been holding its breath since spring. Mina had grown into the space she once hid from. She moved with quiet certainty, never loud, never seeking, but the hush around her now was her own choosing, not fear. She no longer watched the sky for signs of pursuit. She watched it for changes in weather, birds leaving early, clouds rolling in like low-told secrets. The garden, once small and hesitant, now spilled into the yard. She planted turnips, beans, sage. She built a rack for drying herbs, taught herself to make salve for Harper's old knee wound. He grumbled about the smell, but she caught him using it when he thought she wasn't looking. One morning, while stripping seed from a sprig of thyme, she asked, "Do you miss them?" Harper didn't look up. "Who?" "The ones you fought beside." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I miss the ones who didn't turn cruel." She nodded. "I think I miss girls who didn't even have names, just laughter, little songs, the way we kept each other warm when the door locks clicked." He looked at her then. "You remember their laughter. More than their faces." He said nothing more. But he took the pouch of thyme seeds and folded it into a strip of oilskin, careful as scripture. By the time frost came, they had begun walking together each evening, a slow route past the bluff and back. Once they came across a deer caught in a snare, thin rope, cutting deep. Mina knelt without speaking. The deer thrashed once wildly. Harper steadied her shoulder, but she was already cutting the line. When the deer staggered off, blood trailing, she wiped the blade on her skirt and said, "Someone left it to starve slow." Some folks think cruelty's just another way of making sure. She stood, breath white in the air. "Then I'll never be sure of anything." That night she wrote a new name in her ledger, not of a girl she remembered, but a girl she imagined, one who got away, who never saw a locked door. She left the page blank after the name. For hope, she said, Harper built her a fence before the first hard snow. She painted it blue. When he asked why, she only said, "Because it's not meant to keep things in. Just mark what's ours." She had begun to laugh sometimes, short, dry, not loud, but real. Once she caught Harper watching her and asked, "Do I sound strange?" "You sound alive." Winter returned. They split wood side by side, tied bundles of sage to hang from the beams, pressed apples into jars. When the owl came back, scarred wing whole now, circling once before roosting in the old pine, Mina stood beneath the tree for a long time, watching. She didn't call it down, she just looked up, hand on her chest, like someone recognizing their own reflection at last. By mid-December, they had a rhythm. She made bread, he fetched water. He told her when the chimney needed sweeping. She told him when his eyes were too clouded to see straight. They didn't call it family. They didn't need to. One evening, she sat by the fire, the ledger open in her lap, a cup of sweetened tea warming her fingers. She turned to Harper, not asking, not hesitant. "Will you tell me your full name?" He looked up from the knife he was sharpening. "It's nothing useful." "I want to know." He set the blade down. "Isaac Harper, I used to hate it." She smiled. "I don't." Then carefully, as though the words were a fragile bird, "Mine was Wilhelmina. Mina's all I kept." He nodded. "Mina suits." The snow deepened. The world beyond the bluff disappeared into white. They stayed near the hearth, near each other. No one came up the trail. The silence was full, not empty. One morning, as pale light broke over the ridge, Mina stepped outside, boots crunching on the porch. She looked out at the horizon where trees met sky, where she had once imagined she'd disappear. Harper stood behind her, coffee in hand. "You cold?" he asked. "No." She turned, and for the first time since the freight wagon, she looked at someone without flinching. "You waited," she said. He shrugged. "Didn't feel like waiting." She smiled. "No one claimed me." "You claimed yourself." She looked back toward the hills, wind lifting her braid. "Still," she said, "you were the first who didn't want to own me, only see me." "That's enough." She nodded, more than. The sun rose slow and gold. The owl flew east, and Mina, once the quiet one no one claimed, stood on her own land, with hands no longer empty and a life she had chosen in full.